Hello, everyone, and welcome you to Mojo for Industry Development debate on Digitalization and Machine Tool 4.0. The session is sponsored by Siemens. Machine tools have critical role in manufacturing industry and are called the mother machines because they make other machines possible. Machine tools market in India is expected to exhibit a CAGR of around 11.45% during 2022 and 27. We are now in the fourth industrial revolution, also known as Industry 4.0, which is about using technology and efficient processes alongside more intelligent platforms. Things like Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and big data are all being used to augment and transform the manufacturing operations. What does this mean for specific areas of manufacturing, in particular for machining? And how is Industry 4.0 going to impact machine tools industry? To understand more about this, today we are joined by industry veteran Mr. Chandrasekhar Bharti, founder and managing director, S Micromatic MIT. Welcome, sir. And Mr. Sachin Sanghi, cloud specialist, MindSphere, Siemens Digital Industry Software. Welcome, Mr. Sachin. Mr. Sachin will share his presentation on streamlining IIoT, that is Industrial Internet of Things adoption for your Industry 4.0 journey, where he is going to talk about how digitalization is going to impact machine tools industry and benefits of connected machines for machine tool end users.
Today, companies are sitting on a mountain of data. There is no the data is there in how we are designing our products. They are getting connected to IT systems when these machine tools are going into the shop floors. They are using some resources from building infrastructure. They become production assets that are automation data. But how do you transform all this data into value? What we've been using in PLCs and automation for the past 15, 20 years, we are doing that. But how do you transform all of this data together into some value? So there is a long way from data to value, right? It is easier said than done. So typically the first step is you have to connect and manage the assets. Some amount of connectivity you might have already, but when we are talking about industrial Internet of Things, then the connectivity needs to have certain characteristics. So in most cases, it may warrant a relook on how your assets are connected and how they are managed. And what you get from there is raw data through sensors. This raw data in itself really has no meaning. But first, this raw data needs to be put somewhere where it can be held in long-term storage and on which various rules and processes and algorithms can be applied, right? So the next step is data ingest and storage. And here is where we start to see that, okay, we need to make this data meaningful. We need to put some semantics to the data. And in order to put semantics, we have to contextualize the data. So if my sensor is giving me a particular tool temperature, a particular tool life, then on which production order it is working on, how many hours it is working on, which operator is assigned to it. So all that information has to be contextualized. And that's when the raw data from the field becomes qualified for you to use. And then the fourth step is consuming. So while it is a long way from data to value, the good news is that all of this is now available in very easy to use, very easy to scale, very low entry barrier. There are several solutions that one can start with. And if that is your starting point to consider how to convert your data into value, which data into what value, then of course, this is only the starting point. There is a journey to it. And that journey, of course, is digitalization or Industry 4.0, like we mentioned in the beginning. So where your journey really leads you to is you start with connecting and monitoring. And this is what becomes your stepping stone to analyze what you have connected, collected, and then that analysis gives one the opportunity to start predicting how long the tool is going to last. Is there any anomaly that is being observed? Can I prevent the repair? Can I prevent the breakdown from happening? Can the deterioration in performance can be predicted and prevented? And once we are mature to analyze and predict, that's where we really get into digitalization, into true real digital transformation. So as one looks at industrial Internet of Things, one of the way to look at it is we can divide it into 7 layers. It always starts at the bottom. On the southbound is what you have. So once the layer 2 is well designed and implemented, that opens up a world of a cloud infrastructure. So a lot of this data that we are collecting on the floor today, we don't store it because we can't afford, and it is not a good practice to have large data centers on the shop floor. So once you connect to global infrastructure, it gives you the ability to store your data, to compute that data in terms of big data, and start mining it, apply machine learning, build custom apps, and then you do a transformational decision making. And that's how you start your journey into digital maturity. Uh, Amongst the many tools available, one of the market leading tools is MindSphere. Um, it is a Siemens technology, which is uh, which is highly evolved in terms of the comprehensiveness it provides.
So from Mr. Sachin's presentations, it is clearly understood that digitalization will completely transform the machine tools industry in the coming years. Now we are joined by Mr. Chandrasekhar Bharti, who is going to talk about how Indian machine tools manufacturers are adapting to the new environment.
Question is, how do we make digitization and industry for real? Okay? And how do we sort of tie that with automation solutions, which is where a lot of the industry is starting to move towards. So one of the key requirements of digitization or industry 4.0, or now there's a nomenclature being used is industry X.0, okay, is when you look at the sequence of events that happen on any production shop floor. Let's say there's a certain event that has occurred at time T1, the discovery happens at time T2, the analysis happens at T3, the solution is applied at T4, with the hope that we are able to compress these response cycles as we go forward. So for each part of compression of these cycles between T1 and T2, it could be real-time system integration, T2 to T3, so on and so forth. So this is sort of the domain of Industry 4 or digitization. So when you apply that to the context of the overall company, there are two aspects. One is, how do you take all of that and make any company vertically integrated with all their processes, right from raw materials coming in to the finished products going out and everything else getting connected to that. And once a company like that is digitally integrated, how could it become part of a value chain of customers on one side and suppliers on the other side? So this is sort of the big picture view of digitization, and then how machine tools can play a part in ensuring the acceleration of this adoption. So Sachin talked about what the needs of a customer is or an OEM manufacturer is. Now we have a similar perspective, but also an expanded perspective. So fundamentally, a customer is always going to be keen on profitability, the quality levels, ease of doing business with either their customer or with a machine vendor, and the cost of doing business with a machine vendor or their own customer. If you look at an equipment manufacturer, what really drives us is how do we ensure that we feed back what we are seeing in the field into better machine performance. It could be even from a design perspective or from a field perspective. Now, are there service models that we need to explore that could be of benefit to the ecosystem? And using real usage data, we are able to help the customer achieve levels of productivity that they would potentially not do it in isolation. There's also another aspect of this. Any machine needs service. So an agency or a set of people doing servicing would like the customer to have better traction and stickiness with them, because they want to go back and make sure that not only they are able to service the customer's need, but also potentially grow them into future solutions. So all of this together is what is driving digitization in machine tools or Industry 4.0 in machine tools. So in order to make this a successful engagement with the customer, a machine tool manufacturer really needs to take a true solution partner philosophy, because it's not simply a box that I hand over to a customer and expect that a customer does whatever they are supposed to do, including the ability of looking at boundary conditions. For example, Sachin talked about, let's say, an industry IoT gateway. Now, what happens if the gateway goes down, or what happens if the cloud infrastructure goes down, or the connectivity goes down? And for this to result in useful outcomes, it is a technology play, it's a domain play, and it's also a service play. So, what is required for continuous innovation is to ensure that whatever is being seen at any customer is sort of fed back into the development cycle and the service cycle to mature the models that will help add value to the customer in the future. So, with this, I'd like to conclude my quick presentation and talk.
Though digitalization is inevitable, we actually fairly could make out from the presentations of Mr. Sachin as well as Mr. Bharti. That is very inevitable for machine tools industry. But there are some challenges for organizations, as mentioned by both the speakers, to embark on digital transformation. So to start with, Mr. Bharti, could you share your opening remarks on the challenges, basic challenges what the machine tools end users are facing?
There's different categories. One is categories of what an SME customer typically faces. And this would be the profile of an owner-driven company who has been fairly successful and has gotten to a certain level of technical competence and some amount of managerial competence as well. The second class of challenges faced could be the mid to large size aspiring companies, where they've sort of broken the barrier of a MSME, but they are yet to get into a completely process-driven, systems-driven organization. The third category is very large organizations or very mature organizations that tend to be fairly systems-driven or process-driven. Now, it all sounds, very nice to think of different stages of maturity, but each of them have their own challenges and pain points as well. So if you look at the SME, a lot of the time, the level of digital maturity, that is the ability to consume data, is missing. And it is missing primarily because the value attributed to data is not yet tangible, because the owner-driven company typically believes that, look, I've been doing this for the last 25 years, and I've gotten to, let's say, 50 crores, 100 crores, 200 crores of revenue, and I actually have a enterprise that I've built and it's running nicely. I probably take back a profit and a dividend as well. So the perspective of what more do I need to do with data may not be that value accretive. So here, what is required is for such companies to partner with agencies or entities such as, let's say, the CII Smart Manufacturing entity, or NASCOM or IMTMA, where there are these centers of excellence who can come in and help them with understanding the maturity model itself of digitization, and perhaps do a diagnosis of where they are and then what could matter to them. The mid-tier of the maturity model suffers from a need to grow fast, at the same time not necessarily having the leadership skills to sustain digital journeys. They could do it as perhaps a proof of concept, or maybe in one division or one unit, but then how do you really scale it up from a cross-functional perspective? The large companies are obviously far more adept with perhaps imbibing digital flows. There, the real challenge comes from, how do I engage my value chain to also participate? Because it is a network effect that the large companies require. And here, what we have seen is we start with those processes which are part of the normal business that they have to do anyway, sort of the hygiene of what they need to do, and we digitize that. And that results in a much lower business friction and a much higher offtake quickly right from the value chain. So the solutions are different, the paints are different, the categories could also be different based on the industries, but it is a, complex mix of how we need to approach that with a lot of domain expertise.
Mr. Sachin, can you share your opening thoughts on the challenges in the digital transformation journey?
Overall, if I start with the challenges, the timely delivery of good quality and low cost products, I think that is still the main challenge of Indian machine tool SME. And with the COVID, the demand going down, I think the other challenge which is causing some stress in the system, um, since we all know automotive contributes to a very large part of the growth in India for the machine tool industry. And as the AEVs are coming into play, there are lesser number of machine parts. There are fewer parts and fewer machine parts that are required, right? So these are some of the challenges that are sort of, from the top that are coming down. On the other side, if we see what also the pandemic has induced is, I believe it has induced some slowdown in prototyping of the parts, right? Because 3D printing also has not been able to gain as much as a technology. I by no means mean to be an expert on the 3D printing technology, but I think that there is more room left for prototyping parts as well. So that's on the opportunity side. The other opportunity really lies in new kinds of materials that are coming up, and in applying digital transformation to your business as usual. So as our products keep changing, as new materials keep getting invented, there is again an opportunity for the machine tool industry to partake, that support that, like you talked about, that these are mother machines. So it is not just the materials of today. If we look out maybe 2 decades from now, everyone will be dealing with new kind of materials. So that also becomes an opportunity. So how does one really go after these challenges? How do you meet these challenges, and how do you unlock some opportunities? Excellent quality of tool design is a hygiene factor. The backbone really is digital transformation, and collecting and managing data, efficiently executing it, putting in the necessary safeguards. There will always be some risk takers that will be early adopters that would be there, and then there will be followers who would see the success of early adopters and follow. So there are contingencies. There are various again, how well you plan and execute your digital transformation can help you meet these challenges, because by having a backbone of data, you will be ready for all the ups and downs that come. Last point I would again like to build upon what was said by the previous speaker is the top management competency. It becomes extremely important that as managers, we also educate our top management. That's the duty of the people who are running the businesses, to come back with examples and get the buy-in of the top management. Show them what lies, where the transformation is happening, where the successful new innovations are coming from, and then it goes into, that will help you meet your foreign manufacturers trying to come into India, supply chain disruptions that are coming along, logistics management that is happening. So those are really the challenges, the opportunities, and how digitalization plays a role that I would like to state.
Thank you, Mr. Bharti, as well as Mr. Sachin. Once again, it was my pleasure having you here today. The session is sponsored by Siemens.
For more updates, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon.